What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to the Uncommon Mindset podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Today, I'm joined by Robert Drysdale. I'll just give you a brief background on who Robert is. Robert is a American Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 4th degree black belt under Léo Vieira, a retired mixed martial artist and an instructor at his own BJJ academy, Drysdale Jiu-Jitsu. Having won multiple world championships, he was referred to by Vice Magazine as America's Jiu-Jitsu superhero, regarded by BJJ Heroes as the most accomplished American grappler of his generation, and as the best submission wrestler in the world by Gracie Magazine. To show you how much of a beast this professor is, he's an ADCC champion and has even tapped out the likes of Marcelo Garcia. What an honor it is to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. It's my honor. It's a pleasure.
No worries. I just want to start off by asking, what was your upbringing like?
It was unusual. I was born in the U.S. My mother's Brazilian. My father's American. So I moved to Brazil when I was, between 5 and 6 years old. And, my parents loved Brazil and they wanted to raise me there. And I had a good childhood. It was rough at first. And I moved there. I stood out. I was an American kid, had an American name. I didn't know how to play soccer. It doesn't go well in Brazil. We don't know how to play soccer. You don't have a lot of friends, put it like that.
No, of course.
I had to learn poorly, but I learned. But yeah, it was, it was a good childhood. It was, I was a very competitive kid, but not particularly good at anything. And that all changed when I found jiu-jitsu. I found purpose. I found meaning. I found something that meant something to me on a much deeper level. And I'm very, very happy that I found. I have no idea where I would be or what I'd be doing if it were not for jiu-jitsu. So I got lucky.
Of course. When did you actually find jiu-jitsu, and how did that process work?
I was 16-ish. I mean, jiu-jitsu started really becoming popular in Brazil after Gracie in 93. So ironically, it wasn't the first time I heard about jiu-jitsu wasn't about the UFC or Gracie, but it was what in Brazil they called pit boys at the time. They were the bad boys. They would cause problems and fight on the streets, and everyone was terrified of them. And they would go to nightclubs and get into fights and beat up the bouncers, and everyone was terrified of everyone who did jiu-jitsu. And that was as a 16-year-old, that was a very attractive idea. I'm not very proud to admit that. Now that I'm 39, I look back and I go like, oh.
Yeah. I was listening to one of your podcasts you did. I forgot with who, but you mentioned that the word bullying wasn't a thing when you were growing up. Obviously, a lot of people were getting bullied and stuff. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, the word bullying doesn't exist in Portuguese. You can't translate it.
No way.
The concept doesn't exist. If you try to explain it to Brazilians, they don't know what you're talking. I mean, it's like one kid making fun of the other kid, and they're like, yeah, that's such part of everyday normal life in Brazil. I mean, if you watch two Brazilians talking, all they're doing is making fun of each other. That's all there's no conversation. They're constantly making fun of each other and they're pretty brutal about it. Political correctness has made its way into Brazil now, but it is, it's some of a new thing. It's influenced by the rest of the world, but typically speaking, Brazilians are very politically incorrect. If you have a birth defect, they're going to make fun of your birth defect 100%. And you grow up getting used to it. I have a birth defect and I got teased my whole life over it. And it used to bug me as a kid. And then I got to the point where I'm like, so what, and then you just kind of get over it. Yeah. But that's what they do. They make a lot of fun of you. And it's sort of normal. I mean, they fight a lot. There's a lot of fight. When I was a kid, there was a lot of fighting going on. You had to prove yourself, What's funny thing, when we were kids, there was a code of honor when we had to fight. I was just telling someone this the other day. Now you get adults fight whenever they fight. It's always their friends get involved and they're weapons involved. And, it's just, there was a code of honor when we fought as kids. No one could intervene. It was the most embarrassing thing in the world if one of your friends or your parents intervened. You couldn't eye gouge, you couldn't bite, and no shots to the groin area. I think those were the rules, if someone had a watch on, watches were a big deal when in the 80s, when you're a kid, no one had a watch. If you had a watch, it was a big deal. So you had to give your opponent time to take off his watch. That was no fighting until you could take off the watch because you don't want to break it. There was a code of honor there. There was a commission, you know, but a lot of that. What else? Yeah, man, it's a sort of like normal everyday life growing up there. Like it's very different now, obviously, but it was good. I don't resent it. I don't regret it anyway. I think it was very important in the formation of my character in general. So I'm very thankful for it.
Of course, yeah. When did you actually know that, jiu-jitsu is something that you want to do, for like rest of your life, basically? When was it? Do you know?
You know, it's funny, man. Like it was when you tell people about certainty, people think you're full of it. Like, now you just happen to, like, you think you knew what you think you knew, like, no, man, I knew. Like, when the second I started training, I'm like, this is it.
Oh,
I
really?
knew I had been missing something. I didn't know what it was.
Mm.
And when I found jiu-jitsu, I was immediately drawn to it. I was immediately like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I want to be good. Because I wanted to be good at something. But like nothing really spoke to me the way jiu-jitsu did.
Yeah.
And I had zero doubts. Like it's hard to explain. It's like, now people, like, sometimes they think, you're like, how could you be so sure? Like, I don't know. It's like, if you've ever been like deeply in love with someone, you see the woman, you meet her, like that's it. As people that have been in love will tell you that. Like, no, you just know.
Yeah.
You just know.
Yeah. No.
And it was like that.
Yeah. No. Like when I went to do jiu-jitsu the first time, I fell in love with it as well. It's something different about it. Like when you walk in, and if you have an ego, or you think you're the bigger person, you go there and you will get choked out. You will get choked out, and it's amazing. And yeah, I love it so much, honestly. Like my coach is Ash Williams. He's like ranked number 4 in the world at the moment, and he's phenomenal. And Chris Reese as well. Yes, but yeah, I want to ask you now. I know that you've created the documentary and the book called Closed Guard. What was that whole process like for you?
It was sort of an accident, really. When I was young, I was very attracted to history and archaeology, and I mean, I've always been very attracted to the humanities. I think my passion for the humanities runs side by side with my passion for jiu-jitsu. They've always been part of my identity. And being a professional fighter sucks all the energy out. It's not the time. People think, what's the time? It's the energy. It's different. You have time, you don't have energy, because you give so much that when you're home and you could have time to read or write or do something, you're just exhausted. You don't want to. You just, like, your mind is burned out, your energy is gone. So when I retired, I sort of like reawakened that old passion of mine of reading history books, and I went back into who I was before jiu-jitsu. Basically, it was a reawakening of my old self in some ways. And just the jiu-jitsu history was just like something that it was a natural progression. I combined my two passions. I remember the whole thing. I mean, there's not a single event, but if I were to pinpoint a single event, it was a student of mine asking why I didn't have a picture of Maeda, Carlos, and Helio on the wall like every other gym. And I'm going, it's no disrespect. It's just, I don't know history. And I'm a little skeptic towards it, because the one thing that you know about history is, if you get one point of view, there's a very good chance, especially the people who are telling that narrative have everything to gain from that narrative. It is very unlikely it's going to be an accurate depiction of history, right? Or as close as possible accurate. And that was my suspicion. That was my immediate instinct towards jiu-jitsu history, but I never bothered looking into it. But something happened, like when you asked that question, like, you know what, man, I'm going to do some research here. And I started Googling some stuff, and I couldn't find it. Surprising. Like when you look, now there's something, but like 10 years ago, if you search Brazilian jiu-jitsu history, you were not going to find anything that wasn't a Wikipedia or a random, news, internet article with no sources. You are not going to find anything sourced. You could look, I mean, now you can find it, but it's available, right? And there's been a major change. There's been the Brazilian National Library digitized their files in 2012, I believe. So after 2012, there's been this renaissance of, like, jiu-jitsu history research, and now we know a lot more than we did 10 years ago. And there was some work published, and I bought those books, and I went through those books. The one I always recommend in English is Choque by Roberto Pedreira. Choque and Craze, highly recommended. They're heavy reads, but they're very informative. And it's sort of like the book combined with some other books in Portuguese, and PhD, Giuseppe Fiucairo's PhD dissertation too. Highly recommend it. It's on jiu-jitsu history. And I read these and I'm going, man, this story is amazing. This is way better than what we were told. And I wanted to get the word out there. I wanted more people to know. Because when I asked people, like, do you know this? You heard of this guy? No one ever heard of that guy. Because people had only heard of Carlos and Helio and no one else pretty much in Maeda, those three. And there was like all these other characters are instrumental. Some of them even more important in Maeda. Some of them more important in Carlos and Helio in certain periods, right? Including members of the Gracie family, ironically. And no one's ever heard of them. And I'm going, man, this is crazy. And I knew that people weren't going to read the books because if I bought them a copy of the book, I knew that they were just going to sit on the shelf. So I had the idea of putting a documentary together and making that documentary something that was accessible to the public. Like I call it a bridge in between whatever academic work was out there and the average jiu-jitsu practitioner that wasn't going to read that work. I wanted to kind of connect it to as best I could. And I figured that film format would be the best way to do that. Of course, I have zero experience in filmmaking. When I say zero, like I'm not exaggerating. Like I'm not fishing for compliments. I really don't. But, I've learned something along the way, but it was more of an uphill battle of learning. I'm still going through that process and we're a little late. It turned out to be a much more difficult project than we were anticipating. I thought it'd be a walk in the park, put some images together and post, but at the same time, the longer it takes, the better it gets. Like we're making a better film as we go and we're happy. We're happy with the result. And then we have the book. The book was like an accident. It was not planned. The book was a product of boredom. I gained a whole new respect for idleness and boredom after this last pandemic. I actually think it is healthy and necessary for people to be bored and idle. I remember like listening to people say that creativity was a product of idleness, but I guess I have the Protestant work ethic too ingrained in my DNA for me to believe that. I was like, no, that's nonsense. You're just being lazy. You want to sit around and smoke pot all day. And then I had to have a pandemic where I couldn't do anything. Like my phone stopped ringing. Social media was dead. I couldn't teach class. I'm just like sitting on my ass all day. I'm like, there's absolutely nothing to do. Like I'm looking for responsibilities. And other than cleaning the house, which I hate, other than working out at home, which I also hate, there was nothing for me to do.
Yeah.
So what the Roberto Pedreira, the historian that I was telling you about, he recommended I write an article about the history of jiu-jitsu. Oh no, I'm sorry, an article about my memories of making a documentary because I had some cool side stories about filming this in Brazil and Japan. And there's a lot of cool side stories. I'm like, oh yeah, I could write that in an article. And the article that was going to be 2,000 words turned into 100,000 words very quickly. And then I'm like, I got to publish this. And we edited the interviews. Like the interviews are not full length, but we put the edited version of the interviews up there. And yeah, we published a book. It came out in October. I wrote it in like May, June. Spent the next 2 months editing it, back and forth between the editing was more work than writing it, believe it or not. And that maybe took longer at least. And once that was done, we released it in October. We just came out with the Portuguese version about a month ago. It's doing really well in Brazil. And we got a Polish version coming out. I think it came out today. I don't know. I haven't confirmed, but I know the book's already in inventory, ready to be shipped. But we're going to start promoting it soon. So I think Polish is going to be out today, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we got a Spanish and German version coming out as well.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, incredible. What I'll do, what I'll do as well, I'll leave all the links to the book and the documentary and the link and the description as well, so people can go and check it out if they haven't. I know that you interviewed a lot of people. What was one memory that sticks out to you from that whole experience? Because you obviously mentioned you went to Japan, you went to Brazil, all around America to do this. What was one thing that stood out to you?
There's a few. It made me gain a whole new appreciation for the elderly. I think that, some cultures, they honor their elders. I don't think the Western culture does that. Like Western culture is very like business oriented, like practicality, go get it. And once you're like, you're senile, you get to a certain age, like you're just a nuisance, you're just like in the way, kind of whatever. Where, other cultures value, age a lot more because they value wisdom and experience. And I gained a whole new, respect for the elderly, because I found that there was a lot of wisdom there. Like I did learn a lot from them on a personal level beyond jiu-jitsu history, because I'm observing them, maybe because I'm retired now and I'm starting to feel age and I'm starting to feel my joints not moving the same. Like, oh, so this is what getting old is like. I'm like, okay, I know what's in store for me now. Because before you only heard about it, and like you don't really believe it until you're there. And then you start like moving like differently, and your reflexes aren't the same, your recovery is not the same, you got arthritis all over. Like, so you start like, in a way, you're dealing with you're dealing with mortality. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with the fact that you're gonna die eventually, right? Because you don't think about that when you're 20. It doesn't cross your mind. Like, you got my whole life ahead of me. When you're 15, you don't think about these things. And then after training, you're like, okay, all right, I'm already past that first half. I'm already towards the second half of my life. And that's when you start thinking about these things. So I'm asking them for pieces of advice. I did that with almost all of them. Some of them had like better pieces of advice than others. Others, like some of them didn't really quite understand the question, even though, I think their actions speak louder than words. But some of them were very keen to, give someone who they perceive to be very young advice on how to live the second half of his life, in this case of me. And they had great advice. They very different, and they're all over the place. But I think that was one of my favorite things. Like, they had some really, some of it was cliche, some of it was over the top, but like it was nonetheless their summary of what life is about. And I got that from them. And it was a very unique experience. And I'm very happy. It was completely unexpected. I didn't really, it was the documentary was about the history of jiu-jitsu. It had nothing to do with, meaning of life and things like that. But I got that from them. It was good.
Yeah, of course. And I know that you fought some incredible jiu-jitsu fighters like Marcelo Garcia, what's it called, Roger Gracie. Who's one person that you would say has been your toughest opponent to date?
I think Roger was the best. I couldn't score a point on the guy. I didn't score an advantage on the guy. I was in my prime too. It's not like I was, I'm injured, or I was on my way up, or on my way down. It was nothing like that. It was like, no, I was there. I was in my prime. I was in my best shape. The best version of me was the guy who fought him, and I couldn't score an advantage on the guy. He was just that dominant. Yeah. I think he was, most people will tell you the same thing. He was very, very dominant. It's unusual in sports. It is very unusual that someone would be that dominant, there are people that do that, but it's, think about how many world champions there are in jiu-jitsu and how many of them did what Roger Buchecha and Bruno Molfacini did, for example, where they're on top for years and like no one could beat them for the longest time, right? Like this is very rare. Like they had everyone's number, and Roger was definitely that guy for me. I fought a lot of good guys. Like, I fought the best guys in my generation. The only guy from my generation that I never fought, and I've been in the same bracket as him 100 times, but just never fought, was Romulo Barral. I never went against him. But like everyone else from my generation, I fought it, like some of them many times.
Yeah.
But Roger was the most dominant one, without a doubt.
Oh, yeah. And what would you say has been your biggest achievement so far?
Oh, being a dad.
It's funny you say that, honestly. I've asked this to so many people, and they always say being a parent is definitely the top.
It is. And it seems like, because, people don't value it because they go, anyone can be a parent. It takes no skill to be a parent, which is somewhat true. It really isn't hard to be a parent. It's the process is quite fun, actually. It still is something I rank higher than what Jeff Bezos did. Like, some people might think that Jeff Bezos, or being CEO of the world, is a more valuable position. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You only know how much nonsense that is when you actually have kids. So it's nature's way of, messing with your head in a way that nothing else could ever mess with. Like, it's crazy how much it changes it.
Yeah.
But in professional terms, obviously my ADCC and IBJJF Black Belt world titles stand out. I'm very proud of this film too, even though it's not out yet. The book, I'm very proud of the book. I lived a good life in sports, and I did all the things that I wanted to do. There's some things that are missing, like my MMA career could have gone a lot better. But, you know, on the other hand, I put so much time into being a coach. I became a successful coach. I trained 6 UFC champions. But that spread me a little thin, I think. You know, like too much ambition can be harmful. And I tried to do too much, I guess. And because of that, I spread myself thin. And, you know, I didn't quite get that. That was the one thing that I really wanted that I'm missing. But it is what it is. You know, you don't get everything you want. As my 6-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old daughter says, we get what we get and we don't throw a fit.
Yeah,
the
no,
wisdom sometimes.
you've achieved so much. You've achieved more than, you know, most people in life. So no, you've definitely done a lot. And one thing I want to talk to you about, and I know you've talked about this a lot. When the Max thing happened at UFC, and a lot of people said, "Oh, you should have thrown in the towel." And you obviously mentioned that, look, like I know that he had more. Like I know that he could have carried on. What was your whole mindset like when that was when that was happening? What were you thinking?
The thing is, people who don't train, or maybe people who have never fought, they don't understand the difference between quitting because you're injured and quitting because you're tired. They're very different feelings with their very different motivations with very different outcomes. Because we use the word quit to describe both, we think it's the same thing. And someone who doesn't fight doesn't understand that. You know how many times I wanted to quit and my coach made me do another set or another round? You know, that's where excellence comes from. That's what a coach is for. The coach is that guy, you know, that was that rowing competition. There's a guy in front on the boat just like screaming at him with the little microphone thing.
Yeah.
The little loud, I don't know what you call it, but that's kind of what a coach is. Like his job is just to call you names and, you know, talk shit to you and like, you know, provoke you into get another round and pushing you past your limits, you know? So when I do that, I feel like I'm doing my job. The idea that someone would call me a bad coach for that is, I think it's a sign of the deterioration of the culture in general. I think political correctness I think it has its places in certain moments in the world. I'm not denying that it's always bad, but some of it is just, I think people just want to put a crown of righteousness on their heads and go, look how holy I am. I really care about Max. I care more about Max. No, you don't. No, you don't. Stop pretending that you do. You don't give a shit about him. You don't give a shit about. You watch UFC as entertainment. Stop acting like you care about people's health. All right. Don't give me that nonsense. Let's be frank. Fighting is destroying your bodies, your brain, your body, all of it. So you can't tell me that, you know, I have this such concern for human health. I'm like, no, you don't. Look at what you watch for entertainment, you know. But I mean, I don't either. I'm like, I'm with them, but I'm not a hypocrite. I know exactly where I stand. Understand it's a dangerous sport and it carries risk. In the case of Max, there was never any risk to begin with. He was just tired. He was not injured. He was not severely injured. He was tired. And if I had allowed him to quit or just say, yeah, should I throw in the towel? I would have been a horrible coach and I would have never forgiven myself. If I regret anything, is not had been harder on him when he was, you know, like he was on the stool and not coming back. I should have a better choice of words, might have, you know, ignited him, lit him back up. I would have been harder on him. Like I always recommend people, just as a reference, watch the fight between Michael Moore for the heavyweight world title. I can't remember who he was fighting. It's from like 1989 or something like that. It's on YouTube. You can watch it and watch how Teddy Atlas is coaching him in between rounds. Oh man, that's how I want to talk to my fighters. I'm like, that's how I want to talk to them. That's how I want to talk to all my students from now on, because I know it would do them good. And it's just people don't understand the mat has a different morality. Like you can't apply your day-to-day morals about politeness and kindness and being nice to people to the mats, because the mats are not about feeling good. They're about excellence. You understand, day to day, you're interacting with your friends and your family, you know, and at work, it's about being polite and doing the right thing and being kind to people. I get that. You step on the mats, it's a different set of morals. And people who don't train don't understand this. My job on the mats is not to make you feel good, it's to make you feel like shit. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's exactly what my job is to make you feel like crap physically and psychologically all the time. It's a selection process. You're weeding out the bad and you're keeping the good. And it's the same thing with individuals. The weak individuals, they're not going to make it. The strong ones are going to say it's very Darwinian like that. People don't get that. So they expect some kind of, you know, they try to apply the political correctness they live in their world. And that's fine if you want to, live by those standards, but you please don't bring that onto my mats, because I reject that. I don't accept it. Like, this is not what I teach. It's not what I learned. It's not what I want for my students. And if they want to coach it just to make them feel good all the time, then you got to find a new gym. And if you just want to feel good, I just go on Facebook. That's what I tell people. Just go on Facebook. Facebook tells you everything you want to hear.
Yeah.
It just shoots you all the information you want to see. It tells you all the news you want to read. People like your stuff. You feel like you're a supermodel and you're killing it in life because you made some motivational quote about some bullshit that you're doing. And then people feels good. I'm like, okay, go on Facebook then. But that's not it's not me. This is not the Mats. It's different. And what came out there that day was a very small manifestation of that, a very small one. I normally would have been a lot harder. I'm aware of the times. I'm aware that I'm on TV, and I'm aware that these are the kind of things that can ruin your career. I took it easy, I felt like, but it's, people disagree, man. Like, people just, honestly, I think a big part of it is people just want to act holier than thou. Look what a good person I am. I care so much about the well-being of others. And I think a lot of political correctness is not motivated by what is right. It is not motivated by justice. It is not motivated by freedom, democracy, or equality. A lot of it is motivated by, look, I'm such a good person. Look at me. I really care about the world. Like, you really care about people in the world. Do something. Don't try to correct other people on how they think and act. You do something, right? Yeah. This is my 2 cents, but I think it's an overall cultural problem. And like the Teddy Atlas and Michael Moore, in between rounds versus me and Max, 20 years apart, 30 years apart. I think that right there shows you what a cultural change has occurred in the world in the past 30 years. And I don't think it's better.
No, yeah, no. When I was watching it, I think a lot of people don't understand that you're the one that knows Max the most in there, right? Like, if I'm spectating and I'm watching, I don't know who Max is, like, in real life. Only you're his coach. You know what his limits are. You know how much he can put out, and you knew that he could have done more. So I really respect you for doing that. And watching Calvin Kattar the other day with Max Holloway, everyone was like, "Oh, the coach should have thrown in the towel round 4." He was getting absolutely destroyed. But like, just let them fight. That's what they're there for. They're there to fight. And you never know. They could have come out. They could have won that 5th round. Anything could have happened, right? And that's important to note as well, for sure. Yeah.
And had he done that and come out and like won that 5th round, like had Max gotten back up and I lit a fire up his butt and he got up and knocked the guy out, I would have been a genius. The same people who are accusing me of being a horrible coach would have called me a genius. Same people.
Exactly.
It's just that they're too stupid to understand. I don't know how to say it. Like, I don't want to insult anyone, but like, some people are just too stupid to understand the difference. Like, they just don't know that that's the risk you take. You push people to their limits, and that's how you get a Michael Jordan. That's how you get a Mozart. That's how you get these things, by pushing them to the extreme. Like, it's not by, oh, you got tired, Jordan. Take a break. Okay, go home. Take a week off. Your knee hurts. Take a week off. You think you get a Michael Jordan like that?
No.
That's what people, and it's like they want both. They want excellence, but they don't want the risk that comes with that, like, or the pain or the struggle or the injuries and all that, right? Yeah. But yeah, of course, not only that, Max was living with me, man. He's like a little brother. Like, there's not a single at the time he was like, there's not a single person in that arena or watching that fight other than perhaps his immediate family that cared more about it than me. Yeah. So, I've invested a lot of time in the kid and I care about him. So like, it's not like, someone who doesn't know him is going to go, oh no, I really care about his health more than Robert does. I'm like, it's the crown of righteousness. It's just, they just want to feel good. I look at a good person I am. I care so much about the health of the world. And I really care about this guy that I don't know. What a horrible coach. Like, it's just so pretentious. I can't stand it.
No, of course. No, yeah, no, I really respect everything that you said there. I want to ask as well, Robert. I know you've talked about this as well on floor grappling. What is the difference between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and American Jiu-Jitsu? Is there a difference, or is it the same? Of course, it's the same thing, right? But why do people say that American Jiu-Jitsu is different to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
To create content. That's all it is. It's creation of content. It's just like the internet has become a place to seek attention. Attention boosts the algorithm, which boosts your presence, which boosts your your marketability to potential sponsors, and people value you based off of how much of a presence you have online, no longer what you know, what you have done, or what you're capable of doing. They value based off of your internet presence. And for you to have internet presence, you have to do things like create content that draws attention. Controversy is a very fast, easy way to draw attention. So if I say something very controversial, people go on my page and they comment, Brazil flag, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, Brazil flag, Brazil flag, Brazil flag, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm doing? And then if 100 people do that, 200 other people will do it. And if that was 200, another 100 comments, it's a snowball effect. So now you have thousands of people commenting on something that's not even real. Mm-hmm. But it boosts the algorithm. It's the whole, and then when you dig down to peel the onion, you get to the crux of what is actually this is about, and there's nothing. It's the same thing. There's not even an issue here. Oh, you're going to put a letter in front of the words here, and like, what's the technical difference? Oh, there's this technical difference, and like, is that really? I mean, because if we're going to do that, then every gym in the world should have their own acronym. Or every person for that matter, because everyone does things differently. I have never trained with you, but I'm sure your jiu-jitsu is not identical to mine, or to your teachers for that matter, or to your friends. So maybe you should have MJJ, Murad Jiu-Jitsu, and just let everyone do that then, because it's different. Everyone's different. Like the whole conversation is so nonsensical. Like it blows my mind that people like get angry about this, or that they think it's a real thing. I'm like, there's nothing real about it. It is just algorithm building, attention building, and people are falling for it because, I mean, there's some things to discuss in jiu-jitsu. To me, jiu-jitsu is one of those things. There's not a lot to talk about to begin with. I think that's one reason why I wanted to write a history book, because I feel like it's one of the few topics in jiu-jitsu you can actually write about. But there's nothing to talk about when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is something you do. Like how much can you talk about? Like you see these videos, and I'm not against videos instructions. I have them out there. I think they have a place in the world, but it's one of those things where, like, I was watching one of them the other day, and these guys are making very simple things seem very, very complicated because they don't have anything to say. So they'll get like one little tiny little detail, and they'll use 50 fancy words to describe it. It's an old trick. It's the oldest trick in the book. You have nothing to say. You make it sound very complicated. People like, oh, wow, I can't understand it. Therefore, it must be complicated. This person must be so smart, And there's a lot of that going on now. And, it's a trick. But if you actually peel the onion and you get down to what's actually being said, it is either a truism, or it's nonsensical, or it's obvious and shouldn't even be bothered saying, or it could have been said in like less words, or it's just not it's not something you talk about, man. It's something you do. You do. Get on the mats. And what's the secret to jiu-jitsu? Shut the fuck up and train. That's the secret. Yeah. Put your head down. Train some more. Train when you're injured. Train when it's raining. Train when you're tired. Don't have a life outside of jiu-jitsu, and you'll be surprised at what you can achieve that way. But if people want the short route, and then the talking comes in as a pretense of substituting the hard work that actually is involved in being a champion.
Yeah, no, it's funny that is. You're so right, because like it's really hard to talk about jiu-jitsu. If someone doesn't do jiu-jitsu as well, it's so hard to tell them what you're doing, because they just like, what are you're just rolling around on the floor, like, what are you doing? It's funny that you say that. Did you see that thing that happened with Gordon Ryan and Galvao?
Yeah.
What was your opinion on that? You don't have to say if you don't want to.
I mean, I think that it's a combination. People are like, oh, is it an act or is it real? And I'm like, they're not mutually exclusive. It sounds like contradiction, but it really isn't. Like I coached for the Ultimate Fighter a few times, and I always noticed that when the cameras were off, there was like no animosity. The second a cameraman would show up, all of a sudden they're yelling and screaming at each other and pushing each other and breaking doors. And I'm like, is it fake? Is it real? There's a thin line there. Like, they know the cameras are on. And with these guys, I think they know that they're drawing a lot of attention for themselves. This helps their DVD sales, believe it or not. This is a kind of thing that boosts the algorithm. Once again, even negative attention is attention. Like, just go on the page of any Instagram model. What do you see? Booty, 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 booty. Like, don't get me wrong, I love booty too, but like, that is it's their own detriment, but it's okay because I'm getting attention. So even looking like an idiot helps you. Strange. It's a strange world. Like, but looking like an absolute jackass in front of the world actually helps you financially in a strange way. It's very weird, but it does work. And they know that. So they boost a rivalry. How can you hate each other if you never have how can you hate someone you have no experience with? How can you dislike someone that actually hasn't really done anything to you? It's fake. It's fake, but they make it real because they benefit from it. You see, so something that was initially fake and wasn't real, and there's no actual conflict, they benefit from it, right, in a variety of different ways. So what they do is they reinforce it and they go with it, right? I think that Andre forgot that he was in the real world and not on Instagram. You see, on Instagram, you talk shit and you can get away with it. In the real world, it's a little bit different. I think it was Mike Tyson that said something like, the internet had made you all too comfortable with talking shit and not getting punched in the face for it. I'm like, hey, that's my guy right there. I think that shit talking should justify face punching. Like there should be like in the law, there should be some leeway. If you're going to walk up to someone's face and talk shit to them, that person is allowed to punch you in the face, because that will get people to stop talking shit. Now, if you can't handle it, shut the fuck up. But the internet allows you to do that. So I think Andre forgot, and then he was caught off guard and he just broke. That's what happened. Like his first instinct wasn't to fight. His first instinct was to break. I bet he regrets it. If it kind of made him look so bad, because if he had a time machine, my guess is that he would have done something about it. Yeah. But his immediate instinct was to break, was to fold. And he folded. And the worst part is like chasing Gordon afterwards, talking shit. I'm like, he just bitch slapped you. You don't get to talk shit now. You get to shut up or fight back. There's no in between. I think it was David Avalon. He compared it to like if you're playing poker and you call the guy and then he calls you on your bluff and he has a stronger hand. Game is over. He's got a stronger hand, and you can't keep bluffing after you just showed your hand and you got nothing better. Like you don't have anything stronger. You lost. You can't keep bluffing. Like it's over. And Andre's like, he's chasing him now, still talking shit. I'm like, this guy just bitch slapped it. You don't get to talk shit ever again. And then at the worst, then he goes and does a video and apologizes, or doesn't apologize, forgives the guy. Oh my God, forgive him. And then he tries to sell people his website right after. It's like it doesn't get worse. It's as bad as it gets. Like, and I don't dislike Andre, but like he's not doing himself any favors here, man. But the whole thing is a circus, man. It's like a high school. It's like one big high school drama. It's like, I mean, I guess I'm reinforcing I'm being part of the problem because I'm talking about it. But like I think it's bad for the sport. I think it's just long term, it's very damaging. But it's kind of like a car accident. Everyone stops to look at it, but just because everyone's looking at it doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Yeah, of course. And like it's like it's made its way now. Like let's say, for example, if Gordon does have a fight with Andre Galvao, it'd be huge now, right? Because of everything that's happened previously to it. But yeah, no, that's totally fine. Yeah. What I know that you do commentating as well, right? You with the ADCC. What are you doing at the moment now? Are you still doing commentating? Like, what are your goals at the moment?
Well, the tournaments have, practically stopped. And so the commentating thing stopped too. I teach seminars. It's slowly coming back. I teach class daily. And I basically run, if you count the documentary and the book, like 3 businesses. So, I'm a very busy guy. I got kids. My days are pretty long. I'm busy a lot of times doing things I don't like to do, which is, I never wanted to be a bureaucrat, and in some ways I've become the guy who sits behind a desk all day and writes emails and does, files paperwork. It's not the kind of stuff you think you're signing up for when you begin your jiu-jitsu journey. But there's a little bit of all that. Like just like sometimes just talking to students on the phone and answering questions. People, write me and I reply. I'm pretty busy. Like I average like 6-7 hours a day on my phone on full screen time. Oh. And that's all work. That's no fun. It's just pure work. Yeah. So between phone calls and texts, and that's easy 6-7 hours a day. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. What would you? I really like asking this question because I've had a lot of different answers. But what would you tell yourself if you could go back in time? What would you tell your younger self?
I think I would have been better about diet, and I don't mean by that eating less. I mean eating more. I would have eaten more after training. I never really did that. I was like 3 hours without eating after I train. Before I ate lunch, for example, little things like that. I think I would have waited to open a gym. I think I opened a gym at a time where my career in MMA should have been my priority, and I didn't make it a priority. I spread myself too thin, and I think that hurt me. But again, at the same time, like I avoid using the word regret. You know, regret means you're not happy. That's what regret means. Regret means I'm not happy with who I am, because your mistakes get you where you are. So I don't think it's regret that I feel. I think it's more a sense of wonderment, like what would have happened had I gone all the way? Like what would my life be like had I gone that extra step? You know, who would I be now had I gone that extra mile, you know, in terms of my MMA career? And instead of just focusing on, you know, teaching class and coaching people and teaching seminars and doing everything else I was doing. But I wouldn't call it a regret. Like I'm happy with who I am and where I'm at. You know, I could have done better in some ways, I think, but as a result, I think I acquired a lot of wisdom that I would have not had acquired had I gone the route I'm imagining. So when I put it all on the scale, it's been very positive, so I can't complain.
Of course, yeah. And the way I look at it as well, everything happens for a reason. And you know, what you've done when you were younger, as you were growing up, everything has led to where you are at the moment. That's the way I view it, I think. But yeah, no, like honestly, thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate your time. Honestly, I know that, you know, like you said, you're a busy guy. You got a lot of things going on, and I do appreciate you doing this. Hopefully, I am planning on doing a trip to America soon. So hopefully, I'll definitely, if I'm in Las Vegas, I'll come and say hello to you and come and train maybe. That'd be great. But yeah, no, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to say to the viewers maybe just before I let you go now, or you good?
No, if anyone is ever in Vegas, I'm not very political when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Everyone's welcome. You can come by, stop by some training, you know, yourself and everyone's who is listening. Check out the documentary when it comes out. Check out the book on jiu-jitsu history. You know, I believe it's a fun read. I think people will enjoy it. It's going to be on our website, closedguardfilm.com, closedguardfilm.com. What else? Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Just keep living the dream, keep training hard, and stick to it. Do it for the right reasons.
For sure, yeah. No, and like you said, like I'll put the links down below as well, so people can go and check them out. But yeah, no, thank you so much again, Rob. I really appreciate your time, and stay safe, and see you soon, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you. See you next time.